What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 58 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you would like one-on-one counseling, or to launch or join a group using the podcasts or the From Ashes to Destiny curriculum, please send me a message by email at davidfromatod@gmail.com or go to my website, www.fromatod.org, and click on the contact page. When we come back, we'll get into this episode entitled, How Do I Get People Who've Never Been an Addict to Understand? Welcome back to the number 58 episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast, entitled, How Do I Get People Who've Never Been an Addict to Understand? Today's episode will be our third group session. If you've missed the first one, it was episode 55, and the second one was episode 57. I'm honored to have the same friends in recovery from the U.S., England, South Africa, and Australia sharing their hurts, their hearts, and their hopes in this group. As before, I'll be keeping them anonymous, but I'll be saying their answers as if we were having a group meeting. So here we go. Today's question is, many of my listeners and people who want to help addicts have never been an addict and would never use drugs, get drunk, or download porn. So they struggle to understand why you do. What would you say to them to help them understand and empathize with people caught in the snare of addiction? Harry, you want to start us off? Sure, David. The biggest thing anyone who wants to help an addict can do is simply praying for them. During my years of using, I have seen the evil that comes from drug abuse and the witchcraft done to the drugs during the manufacturing process, and can confirm that drugs are not only a physical disease, but also a spiritual bondage. What helped me get free was when I allowed the pastors to pray for me, and the nasty stuff that used to come out of me was shocking. I've seen demonic manifestations talk and fight back from guys in addiction. The bondage is a very serious and real challenge that an addict goes through, and a lot of non-believers sometimes don't believe this. Addicts lack being loved, and most of us get into addiction as we miss out on the love of a good family or friend and get the love feeling from our drug or alcohol. So the best way to help an addict is to pray for them and show them love. Wow, that's a great start, Harry. Eddie, what do you think? Well, no one wakes up one day and says, what a beautiful day to become a prostitute, an alcoholic, or a drug addict. A friend of mine that ran a rehab back in Johannesburg said to me that he doesn't deal with addicts, he deals with people. And that to me was such a revelation, as he went on to explain that addiction is the byproduct of brokenness, bitterness, and disappointment. So when you are dealing with addicts of any kind, you need to set the addiction aside and deal with the heart. Because the heart is the origin of most addictions. Unconsciously, we cover up the above, and the addiction becomes the crutch or the coping mechanism. Fix the heart, and you will find the person. And that right there will make it all worthwhile. Good words, Eddie, and a key part of the From Ashes to Destiny curriculum is dealing with those heart wounds and finding the heart. Gary, how about you? You shared last week about a real heart brokenness and ache that you had. Yes, David, when I lost my wife, I simply could not deal with the loss of my life partner. The pain was overwhelming, and naturally turning to my family and the church community, I found little or no real comfort. I then turned to the only thing that provided immediate relief, which was the whiskey. It dulled the pain somewhat. It was an effective anesthetic that took me out of the real world and created a make-believe one that I found comfort in. What exacerbated my pain, though, and my sense of extreme loss, was that a month prior to my wife's passing, she had received positive feedback from her doctor in terms of her condition, that her condition was improving. She was told that she would recover and that the existing treatment was working. We both believed it was a new beginning for us after years of illness. Then she died, suddenly. The whiskey helped with my pain and also to function. Wow, Glenn, it really tugs at my heart and reminds all of us the importance of being able to understand the pain of the people in addiction and be able to focus on bringing comfort. Charlie, what would you say? I would say, have you ever eaten so much that you were stuffed and got sick? Have you ever got a boss position at a job and it changed you? Have you ever been late to something because that one hair was out of place? Have you ever just eaten one potato chip, mint, or piece of popcorn or candy? Have you ever become obsessed with a song? Have you ever had a big handful or pocketful of money and felt like it's not enough? Have you ever worked yourself till you were exhausted and your family missed you? Have you ever thought of a beautiful woman or man and couldn't stop wanting them? You see, David, every person is touched by addiction. It's just not always looked down on like some things are. The porn, drugs, and alcohol, people who use them are looked at as bad people doing sick things. But I believe it's really sick people doing bad things. There's a lot of bad things used to make people feel better. Please understand our disease is in the mind, and we have a hard time getting help because of the stigma of addiction. Please help us end the stigma and understand alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder can be treated if and when someone isn't ashamed to ask for help or if so many doors aren't closed because of ignorance. So true there, Charlie. And really, I hope that we're all making dents or chipping away at that stigma so that people can get the courage to ask for help. Ben, how about you? Well, David, it's interesting because I was asked almost the same question just recently. It was framed up more so that they asked, Ben, what advice do you give people who live with an addict and how can we help them? My answer then was to live with an open heart as much as humanely possible, but also to set up boundaries. I told them to have a few fish available in the beginning, but to let your goal ultimately be to teach them how to fish as they step into recovery. But my advice for today is to help them have some insight and maybe stir some empathy. That would be, if you live with that open heart, not being naive and allowing yourself to be manipulated by the nature of addicts because they're master manipulators. But as much as humanly possible, living with an open heart will give you the insight and access to reach addicts. Because at the end of the day, the other side of addiction, now in recovery, I realized that all I ever really wanted was someone to love, someone to hold me, to verbally affirm my existence, and to encourage me with words like, hey man, you're talented and you can do great things in your life. Let me walk with you and let's get you back to a place where you can be healthy and productive. You see, addicts are like onions. You have to peel them back a layer at a time. And those layers are all the different emotions that have been built up as they've gone deeper and deeper into addiction. I remember not even knowing who I was when I was deep in it. My whole personality was wrapped around the way I felt when I was on the drug. So when I was off it, I was through the roof with anxiety and didn't want to be around anyone. It was my own personal hell that I had built myself. But love breaks through. Not just one-time love, but as consistent as possible. People will probably say, you're being a fool. He's taking advantage of you. And that may be true. But I believe the boundary set with a heart dead set on continuing to love and love and love, eventually that will break through to the addict and they will accept that love, and you can get to the core of the onion almost immediately sometimes. Well, we're hearing a common theme here, Ben. We're hearing people again and again say it's all about love and consistency. Dante, what would you add? For me, David, I think if we're talking to someone who cannot totally understand addictions of any kind, I think you have to turn to the Word of God and trust what God says. In the book of James, it says that every man is drawn away by his own lusts and desires. Those who in some way are hurting, it's an immediate escape for them as they're drawn away. I would say it's not even something that is really thought through all that well by the addict. It is the pain release and the pleasure chemical to take you from being rejected to being accepted. You just go for it. It took me probably 12 to 13 years before I even recognized I actually had a problem. And when I recognized it, it was pretty much when my fiance at the time was walking out the door. I think with addicts, if you're wanting to help that person, you have to slow them down. Ask them what they think, ask them what they believe, and why they think it, and why they believe it. And don't lose your patience. Have boundaries and firm places to stand on, but you are helping them sift through fields of weeds, thorn bushes, vines, and trees, all tangled up in order to try and protect themselves from the truth. Because the truth of what they think about themselves is that they are unloved and unworthy of love. It may not exactly sound like that for everybody, but that's pretty much what it boils down to. Good words, Dante. It's not just the love and the boundaries, but it's really helping people caught in that snare of addiction to get out of the snare. And I like the way you described it as all those tangled thorns and tree roots and things like that. Adam, how about you? Well, my way of getting someone to understand the addict side is to take something they have to do every day that's part of their routine, and it needs to be something of a higher ranking in their life. Like, for instance, if you wake up, brush your teeth, have coffee, I tell them, try skipping it for a week and tell me how it makes you feel. Tell me how it throws your day off and how it makes everything feel off. You know, your feelings, your thoughts, and your emotions. Then try taking several things from your daily routine and just don't do them. No matter what, you can't do them. and you will have an idea of what an addict deals with every day. You see, everybody says if you're not an addict, you can't understand an addict. I believe that's wrong, because we are all addicted in a way most negative and some positive ways. It's how you look at it and what you admit to. We tend to think because we're not using drugs or watching porn or smoking or drinking that we're not addicts or that we're better than addicts. But we're all affected by something that tends to lead to some type of addiction. The worst thing you can say to a drug addict is that you can relate to them. I want to warn the listeners, just don't say that unless you have been a drug addict. And don't try to relate if you can't. Just express your love and your concerns. Express that you just want to hear them, that you're willing to let them speak about it in a way they want to, so that you can hear their pain and hurt in their voice, in their story, in their emotions. Then tell them that you're always there to listen, and a big one, that you will walk with them through the battle. You have to remember that you can't save them. Just walk with them while they save themselves. Wow, guys, great group today and a lot of good wisdom coming up. Thank you so much for all you share. Thanks for listening to this episode of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. If you enjoy these podcasts, please share the link with your friends and contacts. I also want to open up an invitation to you. I've spoken to several of the members of the group, and they've agreed to do just one-on-one conversations with me live. So if you have any questions that you would want to ask Adam or Ben or Charlie or Dante or any of the 8 guys, just let me know who you have a question for. We'll ask them, and you'll get to hear it on an upcoming podcast. Again, remember, if you'd like to support our work with people caught in the snare of addiction, homelessness, or incarceration, click on the support link in this episode's description. Your donation of any amount could change a life. Tune in Monday for our next episode, and as always, stay safe and stay strong.